That was some State of the Union speech. I guess now we definitely know who cocaine that was found at the White House.
I'm gonna knock you out. Mama said knock you out. I'm gonna knock you out. I came to win, battle me, that's a sin.
America's comeback is building the future of American possibilities. Building an economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not the top down.
Mama said knock you out. Pack it up, pack it in. Let me begin. I came to win, battle me, that's a sin. I won't tell a stack up. Punk, you better back up. Try to play the role and you're the whole crew election. Get up, stand up. Come on, throw your hands up if you got the feeling. Jump up, touch the ceiling. Butts is a fuck fest. Someone talking junk. Pull up, bust them in the
46,000 new projects have been announced all across your communities. And by the way, I noticed some of you have strongly voted against it, and they're cheering on that money coming in.
I came to get down. I came to get down. So get out your seat and jump around. Jump around. Jump, jump. Jump around. Jump, jump.
I know you know how to read.
I came to win, battle me, that's a sin.
Send me the border bill now. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas.
Don't call it a comeback. I've been here for years. I'm rocking my pants, putting suckers in fear. Making the tears rain down like a monsoon. Listen to the bass go boom, explosion. Overpowering, over the competition. I'm towering, wrecking shot. When I drop these lyrics that'll make you call the cops. Don't you dare stare. You better move. Don't ever compare me to the rest that'll all get sliced and diced.
So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America.
Welcome to the Comparison Group Podcast. Listen on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Ooh, yeah, that was some State of the Union. I'll say that. I've seen more decorum and unity at the Hip Hop Source Awards. Do they have a bar inside Congress? If they do, they have to stop serving at least 2 hours before the State of the Union because people don't know how to act. The Democrats and Republicans are the Bloods and the Crips at this point. They just are. Now, full disclosure, I didn't watch every single second of the speech, and I had to watch it over the course of a couple of days because I just can't take it with all the applause and the jumping out of the seat every second. I just can't. I'm sorry. I know it's politics, and I know both sides do it when their guy is giving the speech, but it's not a pep rally, people. You would think you're watching a Duke versus North Carolina game. Every 15 seconds, woohoo, 2 points for Biden. And Democrats leap out of their seats. Whoa, Biden just dunked on the Supreme Court. A standing ovation for 30 seconds. A boo, boo, Marjorie Taylor Greene, boo, foul, Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's ridiculous. Now, Marjorie Taylor Greene, spotlighting a tragedy that people should be aware of, the killing of a woman, Laken Riley, a nursing student in Georgia, by a person who never should have been in the country. That's fine. Spotlighting that is fine, but maybe not the right time, maybe not the right place. I'll say more about immigration a little bit later in this episode. But sticking with this point, on decorum, that room on Thursday night did not look like a room full of people who were interested in working together to find common ground to help the American people. It looked like a visual representation of what we see all over social media every single day. Republicans heckling, what do they call it, trolling Biden. Democrats hooping and hollering at every word as if to say, yeah, take that, you stinking Republicans. And then we wonder why there's a lack of civility in our politics, in our country. That room did not look civil. And if you think it was the fault of one side or the other, well, we just disagree on that. And I must have been watching a different speech. But that being said, it was a good State of the Union speech by President Joe Biden. Some might say great. TV ratings, 32 million. 32 million people watched, which is up 18% from the previous State of the Union. And that's big. That's very big. A big jump like that says people are interested. It says maybe people are still trying to kind of figure things out with Joe Biden. Trying to figure out, does Joe Biden have the juice to get my vote? So the ratings, that's good news for Biden, good news for the Democrats. To talk about the speech itself, I could lie to you. I could come on here and lie to you and say it was a perfect speech and Biden was flawless in everything he said, like some people in left-leaning media wanted to say right after the speech. People on MSNBC may as well have said, I thought that was a young Ryan Gosling standing up there. So vibrant, so full of life. He looked 10 feet tall. And, he had an unmistakable bulge in his pants. Oh, yeah. Oh, he's packing a penis like a baby's arm. Every woman in the room climaxed 3 times during that speech. Standing in a puddle. The man's a god. I could also lie to you and sound more like conservative media the following day. Here's what conservative media sounded like the following day.
Everything that guy just said is bullshit. Thank you.
With the exception of thank you, very argumentative, I felt, from conservative media. So what was it? It was an effective, political, bully pulpit speech by a sitting president. Effective in that I think it will give Biden a bump in his troubling 38% approval rating. I think Trump was around 45% at this point in his first term or his term. So Biden's got some work to do in that area, and I think this will help him. So effective as far as that goes. The rebuttal, the GOP response, Katie Britt, she's a senator, a state senator? No? U.S. senator, really, from Alabama. Alabama here in this country. Alabama, U.S. Yeah, really? Okay. All right. Well, don't completely blame her. When should the GOP response be? When should any response to a State of the Union be? The next day. In all honesty, the next day. But, they want the ratings. They want the eyeballs that night when theoretically people are watching. That's our politics. Got to have the ratings. So we get someone, the Republican Party gets someone, they sit her there. I guarantee you she did not watch the speech. Guarantee you she did not watch Joe Biden's State of the Union. No way. She's too busy. She's getting ready. They're doing her hair. They're doing her makeup. They're adjusting the lighting. 95% of the speech has already been written, but they're tweaking it. They're making little adjustments here and there up to the very last minute. She's been in the mirror practicing the speech. She's been practicing it in front of people, her family and friends for the past 3 weeks. And then they turn the camera on and they say, okay, ready, go. And it's stressful. It's very stressful. You go do it. Think it's so easy. I mean, it probably is, but still, you go do it. So it's funny. I'll cut her some slack. It's funny. It was bad. It did not look good. It did not come across well. But at the same time, it's a shame that they put people in the position to do that. Someone who maybe is not as polished and prepared to be put in that position. So it's funny, but I feel bad for her. I really do. You listen to the speech, you give it some thought for a while, you think about what was said, you think about how you want to respond to it, and then you come out 24 hours later and you respond to it. That's what you really should do. It would be like me not really watching the speech, but going, I got to hurry up and put out an episode. And so I come running here the next morning or even late that night because I feel like, if I don't get my episode out there, if I don't get it out there fast enough, and then I say all kinds of silly things. Well, I don't want to do that. And so I give it some thought and I come up with some random things. Something, like this. First of all, Joe Biden, you got a whole lot of nerve talking about shrinkflation. Have you heard of this shrinkflation? Do you know about this shrinkflation? Yeah, Joe. I talked about it on this podcast probably almost a year and a half ago now. Shrinkflation. I talked about it when you and the Democrats started talking about inflation's coming down. Inflation's coming down. And I said, that don't take into account shrinkflation, the smaller packaging, the smaller portions. It also doesn't take into account skimpflation. Let's see how long it takes somebody to tell him what skimpflation is. It'll come out next month. Hey, have you heard about this skimpflation? It's when they change out the ingredients to cheaper ingredients so your food doesn't taste the same and you can't figure out why. He's got a lot of nerve. And what is it with this my predecessor? My predecessor. What is that? I don't like that. Stop saying that, Joe. I don't like it. Is that supposed to be insulting to Trump? If you want to insult Trump, call him Don. That'll insult him. He'll hate that. Call him Don Trump. If that's what you're trying to do. I don't know what you're trying to do. I don't know what the Democrats are trying to be. You got to decide what you want to be. Do you want to roll up your sleeves and duke it out? Or do you want to say, nah, no, we're above all that. We're not going to get down into the slop with Donald Trump. Decide what you're going to be. And this isn't about civility. Don't get this mistaken. This is about good old-fashioned politics and deciding what you're going to do. You're going to fight rough and tumble, or you're going to play nice. So stop saying my predecessor. Say his name so people know you're not talking about Obama. On Ukraine, I'm not losing support for Ukraine. I support Ukraine. Not losing support for that. Russia has to be stopped. But, how is it possible, Joe? The United States, Germany, France, Poland, Great Britain, on and on. Some of the world's largest economies against essentially a supposedly heavily sanctioned Russia, and Ukraine's the one who's running out of weapons and bombs. How is that possible? Are we the only one that makes weapons? Isn't all of Europe supposed to be helping Ukraine? It's not just us. It's supposed to be all of Europe helping Ukraine. So why are they so hard up for weapons and bombs every 2 weeks? And I know China helps Russia. North Korea probably helps Russia. But come on. Seriously, Russia's economy is growing from what I hear. You got to explain it better, Joe. You got to explain it better than this is just in our national security interest. I'm with you there, but something ain't right. Something ain't right. Without going into detail, I mentioned way back when I did the Ukraine shows, this SWIFT banking system. They were talking about removing Russia from the SWIFT banking system and how devastating that would be for Russia and its economy. And as far as I know, Russia has not been totally removed from that SWIFT banking system. They removed 7 Russian banks back in 2022, but they did not remove the 2 largest Russian banks. So you got to explain to me, why are the American taxpayers footing the bill for a war to provide weapons to Ukraine when we're not using one of our largest weapons, one of our biggest weapons, removing them from the SWIFT banking system? Why is that? Now, there could be an answer. It could be because it would cause a detrimental ripple effect throughout all of Europe and therefore affect us. Okay, give me that answer. But give me some kind of answer, because what you're giving me now, it just ain't good enough. The age equals experience thing, just stop it. Just stop it with that. The age equals experience. If people are going to vote for you, Joe, they're going to vote for you. If they're not, they're not. The age thing, you got to deal with it. Stop with the age equals experience. Because if Joe Biden got to pick a Supreme Court nominee, first of all, you'd hear a collective orgasm across all the liberals like you'd never heard before. And second of all, experience would be dead last on the list of what they cared about. It'd be dead last. Joe Biden could pick the gay actor Billy Porter to be on the Supreme Court, and liberals would be like, I love it. Fantastic. In reality, so would I. See Billy Porter sitting there next to Clarence Thomas, one of those big flamboyant award shows outfits. I'd like that. But they wouldn't care. They wouldn't care. As long as you pick somebody young enough to give us at least 30 years on the Supreme Court. That's what they care about. So stop with the age equals experience. If it did, we wouldn't always be looking for young people to put on the courts so they can stay there for as long as possible. We would look for the most experienced person to put on the Supreme Court. You can't sneak nothing by me. My wife tells me it's very annoying. Lastly, random thoughts from me, and then I'm going to get to some media fact checks. Lastly, if you're now deciding to reach out to moderate Republicans, non-Trump voting Republicans that you have pretended didn't exist for the last 3 years, then reach out. Actually reach out. Go where they are. Go to Fox News. Do interviews on programs they watch and trust, as I've been screaming at you to do for the past 3 years. If you're reaching out to moderate Republicans, I'm going to tell you, I do not think they're over there in the Stephen Colbert audience. I don't think they're over there in the Seth Meyers audience. Joe, you got to go where they are. Show them that respect if you truly want to reach out to Nikki Haley voters, to potential people you could get. I actually do think you could get them. I do think you could get some of those Nikki Haley voters. I do think you can get some of those voters who say, like an Alyssa Ferragamo on The View, people who worked in the Trump administration or voted for Trump and say, I can't vote for Trump. I will not vote for Trump again after January 6th. And they say, oh, are you going to vote for Biden? No, I can't vote for Biden. Well, who are you going to vote for? Those are your two choices. And they say, I don't know. Joe could get those people. But you got to show them a respect of going there and talking to them and listening to their concerns. So if you're going to reach out, reach out. Okay, let's just go through some fact checks. This is from CNN Politics. All right, so from CNN, fact checks from the State of the Union. They start with Biden on Trump and the national debt. Biden criticized the fiscal management of former President Donald Trump during his State of the Union, claiming they added more to the national debt than any presidential term in American history. The fact check, Biden numbers are correct. The national debt rose from about $19.9 trillion to about $27.8 trillion during Trump's tenure, an increase of 39%. But it is an oversimplification, says CNN, to blame presidents alone for debt incurred during their tenures. Some of the Trump-era increase in the debt was due to the trillions of dollars in emergency COVID-19 pandemic relief spending. The national debt has continued to increase under Biden. I'm jumping ahead now. As of the day before Biden's address, it was about $34.4 trillion, an increase of about 24% during his tenure. So Trump's first year, 39% increase with COVID raging for most of that. Biden's increase is at 24% in his first term with COVID waning. So, maybe not such a legitimate criticism, particularly if you start looking at what Trump spent the COVID money on. A lot of that was Democrats saying, no, we need more for people. We need more for people, more stimulus, more this, more that, more. You know the deal. I've talked about it ad nauseum. Next one, Joe talked about his administration's efforts to reduce the burden of prescription drug costs. And he says it's not just saving seniors or saving people money on prescription drugs. It's also saving taxpayers money because it's reducing their debt. They give you a lot of gobbledygook, and there's a lot of detail in there that goes along with it. But for the most part, it is true. The CBO says that the cost savings to Medicare and by reducing the two main drug price provisions in their Inflation Reduction Act will reduce the deficit by about $160 billion over 10 years, I believe it is. So that was rated as pretty much true. Next one, Biden and the deficit. Biden said, I have been delivering real results in fiscally responsible ways. Okay, sorry. Biden says, we've already cut the federal deficit. We've already cut the federal deficit over $1 trillion, he said. Without my laughter, the fact check from CNN, Biden's claim leaves out such critical context that it is misleading. I would use a stronger word than misleading, but okay. While the annual federal budget deficit was more than $1 trillion lower in the 2023 fiscal year than it was in both the 2020 fiscal year under President Trump and 2021, analysts have repeatedly noted that Biden's own actions, including laws he signed and executive orders he issued, have had the overall effect of worsening annual deficits, not reducing them. CNN's fact check goes on. Biden didn't explain that the primary reason the deficit fell by a record amount during his tenure was that it had skyrocketed to a record high at the end of Trump's term because of bipartisan emergency pandemic relief spending. I don't want to keep hitting on this, but I don't know why he does it. I don't know why Joe insists on doing this. It's such an easy It puts such an easy target on him to make him out to be a liar when he consistently tries to paint himself as a deficit hawk, as someone who has somehow decreased the deficit by record amounts when everyone knows the record amounts were due to the COVID spending. I don't know why he insists on doing it. The fact check from CNN ends with, still, Biden's actions have clearly added to deficits. These actions include a pandemic relief law, a bipartisan infrastructure law, a bipartisan law to spur some semiconductor manufacturing, a boost to food stamp benefits, and an extension of the Trump-era pandemic pause on federal student loan repayments. So if he would just admit that the deficit has gone up under him, debt has gone up under him, he could say, but it's been for good programs. It's been for good needed programs. He could even say that, and he won't do it. He wants to take credit for all those programs. At the same time, he still wants to take credit for reducing the deficit. It's insane. It's insane. It doesn't make sense. What's the use? Next one. The next one that he insists on repeating over and over again. The U.S. economy added about 14.8 million jobs between Biden's first full month in office, February 2021, and January 2024. More jobs than added in any previous four-year presidential term. However, it's important to note that Biden took office in an unusual pandemic context that makes meaningful comparisons to other periods very difficult. Biden became president less than a year after the U.S. economy had shed nearly 22 million jobs over 2 months, March 2020 and April 2020, because of the COVID-19 pandemic. The economy had shed nearly 22 million jobs over 2 months. So again, CNN is being nice here. They're being nice about it, but it's clearly misleading at best, a lie at worst, to act like and consider yourself a record-setting job creator and nothing like this has ever been done before and I've created X amount of jobs. It's going to come back sooner or later to bite Joe in the butt. It's going to bite him in the butt sooner or later, because if you look at the job creation in his first year and then go on to second, third, fourth year, and people start saying, well, heck, Joe, it looks like 70% of the jobs you added were added in that first year coming out of the pandemic. Do you care to explain? So even the fact check says, look, Biden is free to take credit for coming in, getting COVID under control, putting legislation in place, stimulus legislation to help to spur the recovery and recover those jobs. He's free to claim that. He won't even do that for some reason. That would be way closer to the truth, and for some reason, he refuses to do it. It's very frustrating. Next one, Biden on the corporate minimum tax. Biden cited a 2021 report from the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy that 55 of the country's largest corporations had made $40 billion in profits in the previous fiscal year, but not paid any federal corporate income tax. Not anymore, he said. Thanks to the law I wrote and we signed, big companies have to pay a minimum of 15%. Fact check. Biden's not anymore claim is false, an exaggeration. While his 15% corporate minimum tax will reduce the number of big companies that don't pay any federal taxes, it's not true that not anymore will any big company, such as the ones listed, the 55 companies that Biden mentioned, it's not true that they will never again get away with not paying any taxes. According to the Institute on Taxation and Economic Policy, only 14 of the companies on its list of 55 non-payers reported having U.S. pre-tax income of at least $1 billion. So what is this fact check saying? It's a little bit confusing. Apology for the way I read it. What they're saying is there's 14 companies. There's 55 corporations, first of all, that didn't pay anything in federal taxes. Not good, right? We don't like that. Nobody likes that. But it's 55 corporations out of thousands. Out of thousands. Out of those 55, there's 14 that will still potentially have to pay any taxes. 14. And so, once again, what drives me crazy with the Democrats is because of politics. Because of 14 companies, they write this broad, expansive law because they want to say we're sticking it to the man. We're sticking it to these billion-dollar companies, but in reality, it's the Amazons, it's the Googles, it's the Apples, it's the Starbucks, it's the this, it's the that. It's these handful of companies that are the problem, not the thousands, but the thousands, the hundreds get affected. They also get affected. There is a trickle down, and that trickle down comes from laws like this. Because they're too broad, they put everyone in the same bucket. And what this fact check is saying is, yeah, It's his claim is false. It's not even going to accomplish what they think it's going to accomplish. I'm trying to keep my remarks short on this stuff so we can get through a few of these, but Europe tried this. Europe did this. We hear things here in America for the first time. We think it's the first time it's ever been done. Europe did the 15% minimum tax on large corporations. And guess what? It only collected 50% of what they thought it was going to collect. Why? Because once they did it, they realized, we don't want to hurt this industry. We don't want to hurt growth here. We don't want to hurt investment in these companies. And so they put loopholes into the law after it was written. And when it was all said and done, they only collected 50% of the revenue they thought they were going to collect. Moving on. They do a fact check on violent crime. Basically, they say it's hard for any president to really point to anything concrete to say whether or not crime goes up or goes down in a major way. So they don't really give too much on a fact check as far as that. They say his data, what he says about reducing violent crime is true, but it's hard to really give Biden, all the credit for that. Next fact check, Biden on the unemployment rate. I think this is the last one I'll do. This is interesting, though. Touting the economy during his presidency, Biden said unemployment is at a 50-year low. The fact check. The unemployment rate did hit a 5-decade low during 2 months of early 2023, 3.4, and it has since remained close to that level. But the latest available unemployment rate for 3.7 for January is higher than the rate was during 9 months under President Trump in 2019 and pre-pandemic 2020. So Donald Trump actually had a lower unemployment rate for 9 months of his presidency than Joe Biden has right now. It's actually 3.9, just bumped up a bit, but was 3.7 for the month of January, which is when Biden made the statement, we're at a 50-year low. So they say it's not necessarily untrue, but it needs context. So that's just interesting to me that he, kind of plays around with the numbers a little bit there, saying we're at a 50-year low or unemployment has never been lower. Well, it was under Trump for 9 months at least. Oh, wait, let me do this one because this one's important. This one's important. And I'm trying to do ones that I think if people are listening, they would be informed by. Because I feel like people probably, if they're listening, they get information from one slanted source or another slanted source. So it's good to get the information from a fact check, from not just me telling you this is the way it is or somebody telling you this way. This is a fact check from something that Biden actually said. So I'm not trying to hurt Biden in any way. I'm not trying to help Biden in any way by what I'm picking to tell you. But the claim, President Joe Biden claimed during a State of the Union address that the average federal tax rate for billionaires is 8.2. Biden used the 8.2 figure in a way that is misleading. Biden didn't explain that the figure is based on an alternative calculation, sounds like alternative facts, alternative calculation from economists in his own administration that factors in unrealized capital gains. This unrealized capital gains is a big problem, Some people on the left, they just don't seem to be able to wrap their head around that whole unrealized capital gains. You're going to tax me before I make the money? Okay. But in other words, while Biden made it sound like he was talking about a federal tax rate, he was actually citing a figure that is not based on the way the U.S. tax system actually works at present. Now, and the fact check goes on to say there's nothing inherently wrong with the alternative calculation itself, but if you looked at what the wealthiest billionaire families pay under current law, they say it's not publicly known, but experts say it's clearly more than 8%. Howard Gleckman, senior fellow at the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center at the Urban Institute think tank, which is a left-leaning think tank, told CNN in 2023, Gleckman told CNN in 2023 Biden's numbers are way too low from Brookings. Gleckman said in 2019, Berkeley economist Emmanuel Saez and Gabriel Zuckman estimated the top 400 households paid an average effective tax rate of about 23% in 2018. In February 2024, Gleckman provided additional calculations from the Tax Policy Center. The center found that the top 0.1% of households paid an average effective tax rate of about 30.3% in 2020, including an average income tax rate of 24.3%. So again, in the interest of time, I won't go any further into detail on this, but I've heard so much about this. You have to understand. It ain't 8%. It ain't 39%. It ain't the maximum tax rate, but it's somewhere in between there. Millionaires and billionaires do pay more in taxes. I'm not trying to defend millionaires and billionaires. I ain't no millionaire or billionaire, and so I have no reason to defend. I just like to defend consistency and honesty. You can't fix a problem if you're not going to attack it honestly. So it's not the 8.2 figure that Joe Biden cited at the State of the Union. It's just not. That's coming from a left-leaning think tank telling you that. It's a CNN fact check from a left-leaning think tank. And lastly, fact checked on Katie Britt. She actually butchered a story about a poor woman who was basically sold into sex slavery, and she just completely misled and misrepresented the time, the place, the facts, just everything. It was a mess. I'm not even going to get into it. Oh, I was getting ready to wrap up, but I forgot I did want to get back to immigration. Without getting into detail, the numbers under Biden are bad. They're real bad. I mean, real bad since Biden took office. And you know that because Joe Biden didn't sit up there at the State of the Union and go, I just want to congratulate Kamala Harris for the fantastic job she's done at the border. I don't think he said that. Like I said, I didn't watch every second of it. If I'm missing something, you tell me. But I don't think he sat there and, took credit for a great job being done at the border. So that being the case, things have not been good at the border. Now, it's totally disingenuous to suddenly act like this is all the Republicans' fault now, to say, well, they own the border problem now because they wouldn't pass that bipartisan border bill. Listen, the very fact Biden had to be essentially blackmailed into even negotiating the bill with Israel and Ukraine funding says something. But to use the self-inflicted screw-up by Republicans and Trump to negotiate a bill and then come to an agreement and then say, never mind, well, that was stupid. Yeah, that was stupid. But trying to use that to shift all the blame for the border to Republicans, that's going to work with Biden supporters, but it ain't going to work on the people who are pissed off about the border. And that's a lot of people. And that's a lot of people in swing states. Are Republicans now blocking the bill to make Trump happy? Absolutely. In a way, absolutely. I said that, like I said, weeks ago. I said they're crazy for trying to fix immigration in an election year. Trump doesn't want that. So I knew right from the very start. I don't know why they even tried to bring that up. So sure. But at the same time, you have people saying it doesn't fix catch and release. It doesn't, of course, build the wall. It doesn't fix the asylum system, the broken asylum system. And it doesn't reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy. And so there are things in this bipartisan border bill that there are some Republicans saying it just doesn't go far enough, it's not good enough. So there's a little bit of both going on there. Now, this is a problem. Make no mistake. This is a problem for Joe Biden. Immigration probably will decide this election. I know you might say, oh, no, the economy. The economy is going to decide it. Economy is always number one in the polls. Immigration tends to be number two, right behind the economy. Immigration is a big deal. So if we continue to see some of the stories we've been seeing, like Laken Riley, like the person who was killed by a drunk driver who was here illegally, killed by a drunk driver, and Republicans put a bill on the floor to deport people convicted of drunk driving, and the Democrats, like 150 or 160 Democrats, voted against it. If they continue to see the stories like out of New York, the illegal migrants who assaulted New York police officers, kicked a New York police officer in the head while he's down on the ground, got arrested, and then got let out, got released the same day, hours later, because we can't hold you. We can't hold you. No bail. Bye. And the guy leaves the police department giving the finger to the media. Bye. There were I think 8, 9 guys, and they all just scattered. They all were released from jail in New York. And then, of course, they all just scattered because they're not going to show back up to court for that assault. I mean, if we keep seeing stories like that, it's not going to be good for Biden. It ain't just Trump supporters. I got a clip. Maybe I'll play it next show. Couple clips. Clip of a woman, I believe it was in Michigan, Detroit, maybe New York. I don't remember. But she goes to take her kids to the rec center, And they tell her, sorry, rec center's closed. Rec center's closed. Yeah, we're housing migrants here now. You can't go in. And the woman says, what do you mean I can't go in? I live here. My kids live here. We can't use the rec center because you got migrants in there that got bussed here from Texas. She wasn't upset with the governor of Texas. She was upset with Joe Biden. That's who she was upset with. And so immigration is going to be a major issue in this election. Make no mistake. And if Democrats want to keep playing the tennis blame game where they lob the ball back to the Republicans lob it back to them, and they lob it back to the Republicans, I don't think it's going to work well for the Democrats. I'm sorry. It's just, I don't think so. So let me just wrap up by giving you what I wish had come out of the State of the Union, what I wish Biden had have tried to do a little bit more at the State of the Union, circling back to the whole civility thing. And I'll give it to you in the form of an analogy, metaphor, whatever it is. As a business owner, there's nothing more frustrating than someone who knows absolutely nothing about your business or running a business telling you how to run your business. Nothing more frustrating than that. Imagine you go to dinner with a friend. She's a doctor, works in the ER, trauma unit, very smart person. She says to you, so how's business going? You say, it's going great, super busy, really high demand, economy's great. The problem is, I just can't find people who want to work. She says to you, well, pay them more. And you say, yeah, well, it just is really not that easy. There's more to it. I have competition. I have competition from small companies who routinely underbid me. I have competition from large companies who can flood my territory with advertising. I have more overhead and expenses than some of my competition. With the internet these days, it makes it much easier for people to comparison shop. Most consumers are on a fixed budget and want to bargain, if not the lowest bid possible. It's tough to get a job if you're too high. And if you're too low, you don't make any money. And when I said I can't find people to work, I mean good people. Sure, if I just simply pay more, I'll get people, but I want good people. And your friend, the doctor, listens to all that and looks at you and says, I've seen your house. Stop being greedy and just pay people more. And by the way, pay your fair share in taxes too. How would you feel if that was you? If you were the business owner, how would you feel? Maybe the shoe's on the other foot. Maybe you're on the other side. Maybe you're the bright, educated person, professional, out to dinner with the friend. And the business owner says to the doctor, the smart, educated, professional doctor, my son broke his leg last week. I had to take him to the emergency room. This doctor says, okay, let's get your blood pressure. Let's get some other vital signs. And then he starts asking all sorts of stupid questions. Are you feeling lightheaded? Are you feeling nauseous at all? Are you allergic to any medications? Are you allergic to any painkillers? And he said, okay, let's get you in for an x-ray and see exactly where the break is and how bad it is. I said, hey, doc, his leg is broke. Stop trying to pad your bill and just put a cast on it so we can get out of here. The doctor says, yeah, there's more to it than that. And the business owner says, yeah, right. I ain't no sucker. He was just trying to be greedy and pad his bill. Now, are there greedy, unethical healthcare companies? You better believe it. Are there greedy, unethical businesses out there? Sure. But how smart do you have to be to realize how dumb we sound sometimes? How smart do you have to be to realize you don't know everything about everybody? If you've never run a business, you don't know everything about running a business. If you've never been a doctor, you don't know everything about being a doctor. If you've never worked in a warehouse, you don't know everything about working in a warehouse. If you've never driven for Uber, you don't know everything about driving for Uber. If you've never been a single mother with 3 kids, you don't know everything about being a single mother with 3 kids. If you've never been a millionaire, you don't know everything about being a millionaire. How smart do you have to be to realize how dumb we can be sometimes? This is what I wish I had gotten more from Biden. This is the civility, the recognition that you're not going to get everything right, that everything you've done has not been perfect, that everything you've done has not been for everybody, that everything you've done, everybody's not going to agree with, everybody's not going to be on board with, everybody's not going to think it's so great. This is a big country, a lot of people feeling a lot of different ways about a lot of different things. a divided country. And we're losing any kind of media, any kind of politicians, any kind of leadership to stop that divide from getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Democrats routinely praise Joe Biden for getting more bipartisan legislation passed than almost any president. Joe Biden has passed more bipartisan legislation than Lyndon B. Johnson. Since Lyndon B. Johnson, I hear Morning Joe on MSNBC say it almost every doggone morning. Joe Biden and bipartisan legislation. At the same time, they tell you how the Republican Party is a Trump cult lost to any sanity or reason. That's like a husband taking all the credit for his wife getting pregnant. Oh, no, she had something to do with it, too. You can't be bipartisan by yourself. Can you? You can't be bipartisan by yourself. I wish Joe Biden would realize that a little bit more. Joe Biden did well. Joe Biden did a fantastic job of giving a great State of the Union speech. Good for him. I'm proud of him. I want him to do well because he's the president of the United States. And I'm a citizen of the United States. I don't want a bumbling idiot for a president. So when the moment comes, I want him to do well. But I also want him to recognize that there are other people in this country that will root for him too if he appears to be rooting for them. And we're not rooting for each other right now. We're not rooting for each other. The people in that room were not rooting for each other. They're rooting against one another. That's not good. That's not good for democracy. You want to tout Joe Biden's ability to get bipartisan legislation done to reach across the aisle? Good. Keep doing it, Joe. Do it between now and the election. You'll win. You want to reach out to the middle of the country or to moderate Trump supporters, to moderate Republicans? Good. Keep doing it. Go there. Keep doing it between now and the election. You'll win. You want to keep making the case for how effective a president you've been since you've been elected, albeit with somewhat misleading data? Good. Keep doing it. That's politics. You'll win. Joe Biden's biggest obstacle between now and the election, I told you, it's gravity. That's his biggest obstacle because he's going to fall again. He's going to fall off a stage. There's no doubt about it. That's his biggest obstacle. There are no other obstacles. I just uttered a sentence the other day I thought I'd never have to utter. I said to a guy, if Trump can stay out of jail, he'll probably become president again. When did you ever think you'd have to say that about a guy being president? If he can stay out of jail, he'll probably be president. That's what Joe Biden is up against. If he can just recognize that whole bipartisanship, that's your ace in the hole. That's your ace in the hole, Joe. But if you're going to point out your bipartisanship, you got to remember you can't be bipartisan by yourself. Be smart enough to recognize how stupid we can all be sometimes. Woo! That's the show. Thanks for listening. I surely do appreciate it. I know it's always an investment of your time. I got more worked up during that episode than I thought I was going to get worked up, didn't I? Sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes you just got to let it fly. Just let your freak flag fly. Don't forget to share. Don't forget to follow. Don't forget to rate. You know what to do. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora. All the podcast apps. All the podcast apps. Listen to me on all of them. That's what people do. They cheat. I'm going to start cheating. I just don't know how.
It might seem crazy what I'm about to say. Sunshine, she's here. You can take a break. I'm a hot air balloon that could go to space. With the air, like I don't care, baby, by the way. Because
Thanks again for listening. It is very much appreciated. I hope you will continue. I hope you will listen to past episodes. And I hope you will come back for more. Thanks. I'll see you next time.